downloaded a zip file from the National Stock Exchange's website and extracted a CSV file from it. The next step is to parse this extracted CSV file and process the data line by line to get the top moving stocks on a given day. We'll take the CSV file and process it line by line. We'll look at each line of the CSV file and get the specific data points that we need. This is the name of the stock ticker, the opening price, the closing price, the number of shares that were traded. These are the kind of data points that we are looking for. So we'll open the CSV file first. This is always the first step with any file handling. First, open the file. Then we use a CSV handler library to read each line of the file. Now, each of those lines will have a number of different data points or a number of different words, only some of which we care about. So we might only care about the opening price, closing price, and the number of shares that are traded, and not any of the other data points that are present in the file. So we will save the words that we care about, and then before we move on to the next step, you have to remember to close the file. Now, step 4 is to sort the contents of the list that we generated in the previous step and get the data we need to create our Excel file. So, in the previous step, we created a list of lists. Each list in this list of lists is the data corresponding to one ticker. This data is now arranged in rows and columns. The row is representative of one stock ticker or each stock which was traded today, and each row has 3 columns. These are the data points that we care about. The stock ticker's name, the percentage change in the price of the stock, and the value of the stocks that were traded today. Now, we learned how for loops are a way to do something to every element of a list or every key value pair of a dictionary. Lambda functions are even cooler than for loops. Lambda functions, like for loops, are another way to do something to every element of a list. Using lambda functions, you can compress the code of an entire for loop into just one line of code. They're super cool and we will use them to do something in this exercise. What we are going to do is use a lambda function to sort a list of lists. It's like magic. So, given data which is arranged in rows and columns, there's a way to sort this data by a particular column in a very easy way using just one line of code. It's exactly like magic. That's what lambda functions look like at first. You'll get used to them if you use them more and more. We'll leave that for now and we'll see it in action when we code it up. First, we'll create a table of stock info. The stock ticker name, the opening price, closing price, percentage change in the price, and the value that was traded in that day. Since we're going to be working with CSV files, we'll import the CSV module. It has a file handler and knows how to do stuff with CSV files. Now CSV stands for comma separated values, and it's a file format in which each line is a list of values separated by commas. Now, if we know that, why don't we just open the file directly and read it line by line? This is because there are edge cases. For instance, sometimes the cell themselves might contain commas, or there might be some sort of malformed rows or data, and the CSV module knows how to handle such cases. Now, from our last step, we already know that there is only one file in our zip file. So one CSV file which was extracted from our zip file, and this file name is stored in this array list of files. So we'll just set up a variable one file name, which is the file name from that list of files. As you know, arrays are indexed from 0, which is why list of files 0 is the file that we are interested in. Next, we'll keep track of the lines that we are reading in a file using this variable line num. And we'll also set up a variable in which we will store a list of lists. This is the output or the rows and columns that we'll extract from the CSV file and later on process. We will keep only the words from each line that we really care about. These are how much the stock moved today, which is the percentage change versus yesterday, and how heavily the stock was traded. That is how much value has changed hands today. How many? So list of lists is this empty list that we are setting up. We're initializing it, in which we will keep storing whatever we read from the CSV file, specifically these two data points for each stock ticker. So it will take care of 3 columns that we care about: the ticker, the percentage change, and the value traded. We're doing something interesting here. We've used a with operator and opening the CSV file. Bunch of things are happening here. First, the indent has changed because of this with operator. All the code that is going to be written now is inside this block. Now this is a construct to allow us to open a file and do stuff with it and not worrying about explicitly opening and closing the file. Remember how we had worked with the zip file? There were 3 steps: open the file, process it, and then close it. So with the with operator, once the block opens, the file is explicitly opened, and when the with block ends and you move on to the next part of the code, the file is implicitly closed. It is automatically closed before you move on to the next part of the code. Also, the RB indicates the mode in which we are opening this file. We only plan to read the file and we will use a handler because it's a binary file. The handler in this case is the CSV library that we imported above. Line reader is the CSV handler. It knows how to do stuff with CSV files. It knows how to read the lines in the CSV file. But you need to specify a couple of things. The delimiter, which is comma here. Now you could have different types of delimiters. Tab delimited files or pipe delimited files and so on. So in this case, we have a CSV in which the delimiter or what separates the words is a comma. So the CSV handler basically knows how to read a CSV file one line at a time. Then in the next step you'll see how we'll iterate through the lines in the CSV file using this line reader. Now the two bits of info we've given them, line reader is the delimiter which separates the cell values, which is comma, but there is a special case. Now what if you had a string as one of the cell values and there was a comma inside the string itself? So let's say you had one cell which had a list of names and you wanted all of that to remain as one cell. It should not break it up into different cells. Usually this is done by using quotes. So if the cell inside the file itself contains a comma, the entire cell value will be enclosed in quotes and the CSV file reader or handler knows that it should read this as one cell. This is why we specified the second bit of info, quote card, as the double quotes character. We're still inside the width block. Now we're going to actually read the lines in the CSV file one by one. So we'll do this using a for loop. Line reader can be iterated over one line at a time. We'll keep track of the line number that we are in using the line num variable. The first line is the header, which we don't want to actually put in our list of lists. So we want to just skip the header, and that is why we have this variable line num. So in case line num is 1, we'll skip the header row and continue. So this will just reset us to the beginning of the loop again and not execute the next part of the code, which is the one which processes the data. As we like to say, everything in life is a list. So the CSV file is a list of lines and each line is a list of words. Now, we already know from the header, which we would have seen before, that the column 1 is the stock ticker. So the index is equal to 0 is the stock ticker. By the way, whenever you are processing CSV files like this, you need to first take a look at the header. So just get the line num 1, print it out and see what the column headers are. Then you'll know what to do with each of the columns. We know that index equals 5 or column 6 is the previous day's closing price. And index 7 is the day before's closing price. So it's the opening price. Index 9 has the traded value in India rupees. So let's go ahead and basically get each of these values for the particular row that we are reading. So the symbol is the 0th element of the row. Close is the 5th element of the row. The previous close is 7th element of the row. And traded quantity is the 9th element of the row. We can just compute the percentage change in the price of the stock using this formula, which uses the closing price and the previous closing price. Now we have a list which contains the 3 columns that we actually care about: the symbol, the percentage change, and the traded quantity. This is the row that we care about for one stock ticker. So the current row of line reader that we are reading. We'll append this row to our list of lists where we're keeping track of all the output. What are the values that we care about for each of the tickers? So one result row is the row that holds the result for one row, the row that we're currently reading, and list of lists is our running result. One result row will look something like this. Maybe SBI is the ticker, 0.034, 3.4% is the percentage change, and 100,000 shares have been traded. And the list of lists will be a list of such one result rows. So there'll be one row for SBI and one row for Axis Bank and so on. Along with appending one result row to our running result, let's also print it out to the screen so that the user knows the list of all the symbols that we are adding to our running result. This is just a bit of formatting that we are doing to make sure whatever is printed looks nice. The traded quantity is shown in million INR and the percentage change is shown in percentage. That's it. We're done with our for loop. We're done with whatever we wanted to do with the contents of the CSV file. We'll just print a message to the user saying that we're done iterating over the contents of the CSV file and we have printed whatever we have read to the screen as well. We're also saying that the file is closed now, even though we have not explicitly closed the file. This is because as soon as we exit the width block and we change the indentation again, the file will automatically be closed. So we've run our code and we've got the results from the CSV file. Notice how the data is neatly formatted when it's printed to screen. Right. So we have a list of lists now. It is data which is arranged in the form of rows and columns. Each row represents a stock ticker, as you could see in the results above, and the columns are the name of the stock ticker, the value of the stock that was traded, and the percentage change in the price. Now we've been doing a lot of stuff using for loops, but Python has something even more powerful, and this is the lambda function. Using lambda functions for doing this kind of thing is in fact the idiomatic Python way of doing stuff. For now, let's just use a lambda function to sort our list of lists. We won't go into a whole lot of detail about what lambda functions are, but we'll just say that they are a way of doing things to all the elements of the list. We're saying, dear list, here is a function. Please apply this function to every element of the list yourself. We'll not explicitly write a for loop saying, here's the function, apply it inside the for loop. In general, we use for loops very little in Python, and lambda functions are preferred. But our objective in this class is to understand the basics of Python. So we'll not go too much into detail about how lambda functions work. Just think of them as a magical way to do a bunch of things to a list without actually using a loop and writing out a whole lot of code. So back to our task. What we are required to do is to take that list of lists that we got in the previous step and sort it in the order of the percentage change of the price of the stock. So the stocks whose price has changed the most should be the first row, and so on. So all of this is done using just one line of code. We get a new list, which is the list of lists sorted by quantity. We're using the sorted function here, which can be used to sort any iterable. An iterable is basically something like a list or a dictionary or a set, any kind of variable which has a number of elements through which you can iterate. Sorted takes in such an iterable, so in this case it takes a list and a function by which it should sort that list. That function we are specifying as a lambda function here, and the function's result is the index by which it should sort the list. So if you say that x of 2 is the index that we want to sort the list by, it will actually sort it by column 3, which is index 2. And if you say x of 1 is the column by which you want to sort it, it will sort it by the second column, which in this case is the percentage change and exactly what we want. Let's take this for a spin and you will see that all the rows have been sorted according to the percentage change. So as you can see, ant graphic is the first row whose price seems to have changed by 50%. Okay, we've processed our data and we now actually know what are the top 5 moving stocks for the day are. We want to put this into an Excel sheet that we generate.